Okay, greetings everyone. It's 7 o'clock, time to get the meeting underway. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting tonight on the territorial, unceded territory of the Sooke people. Let's remember that we share boundaries and a common interest with the Sooke Council, which like us is making decisions and passing laws that support a sustainable region. All of us are looking forward to tomorrow night's intra-council meeting with Chief Planis and his council at the Sooke Band Hall. That'll be the third time we've met with them since this council was formed, so I'm eager to hear where those conversations go. So I'm here tonight, I'll just say a few words before we get started. No, okay. So I'm here tonight because our mayor, Mayor Tate, is just home from Cambodia, where she's just home from a 36-hour trip, and undoubtedly is severely jet-lagged at the moment. So as we learned in some pretty remarkable emails, again, from her in Cambodia, she's been leading a Federation of Canadian Municipalities delegation to some of the most impoverished parts of Cambodia. All of it's impoverished, but this is a particularly hard-hit region. And she's been addressing issues related to women in government, of which there are very few in Cambodia, as well as issues related to children and families. So I'm interested to hear what her insights and perspectives are that she'll be using as she moves forward as mayor and president of UBCM. Also, I just wanted to quickly say that 2 Wednesdays ago was snow day in Sooke, and by our meager standards, we had quite a significant snowfall, and I just wanted to note and send a hat tip to Victoria Contracting, and their road crews who kept the streets pretty clear, as is their contract responsibility. And this was their first big road test, and they came through with flying colors. Also, kudos to staff. I'm running with this a little because I've got an opportunity. Kudos to staff for the budget open house. About 50 or so members of the public turned out, which is double the attendance from last year. And evidence that a big electronic roadside sign can have some impact on turnout. More than 100 people have completed the online survey, and that'll be up until the end of the month, I believe. Till this Wednesday. It'll close this Wednesday, so there's an opportunity to have your say, and we'll be getting all that feedback prior to a committee of the whole meeting on February 3rd, next Monday. Okay, so can I have approval of the agenda? A motion to approve. Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All approve? Okay. Adoption of the minutes of December 9th. Can I have a motion to adopt? Moved. Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All approve? Okay. So we're into the delegations portion of the evening. Wildwise Sooke is here. Samantha Webb. As it's always stated, you have 5 minutes. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Again, my name is Samantha Webb, and I am the Community Coordinator for Wildwise Sooke. We are a working group of Transition Sooke Town Society, and I thought I would prepare a presentation for you this evening on everything that we did in 2019 and our hopes and dreams for 2020. So as you have in front of you, some of you, the calendar, that was a big hit this year. We ran that for the first time, and it was definitely a big success as far as our standards go. But some other ways that we're out in the community other than just educational calendars, we do have our signs as well. Of course, those yellow barren area signs that we still have, and this year we adopted those 2 other signs that you see on the screen there, wildlife crossing, and the other one quoting the bylaw against feeding wildlife. So we do have a couple areas in Sooke that both those signs came in handy, so you might have noticed those up and around the area this past year. Another thing that we do in Sooke is we pass out educational flyers door to door. So those are the ones that we created this year. And it's a really good way, if there's a hot spot of bear activity, to go around and pass out some education to the residents in that area with a quick, easy, bright flyer, just letting them know different ways that they can better coexist with that bear to hopefully help it move on. This year we also created some brochures that we have in the Sooke Museum as well as in the Welcome Wagon packages. And again, it's just more information on not just bears and coexisting with bears, but also education about wildlife in general and resources that new community members can search out in regards to, injured wildlife and, if they get raccoons in their attic and what happens if they find a baby seal on the beach and that sort of thing, things that happen in Sooke. So just quickly, ways that we are also out in the community behind the scenes. We're on our social media accounts, so our Facebook page, if you don't already follow us, that's a good way to see what we're getting up to and different ways we're getting out in the community. We also updated our website, totally revamped our website this year, which was actually a big job. And then we're in the newspaper relatively often writing news articles for the Sooke Pocket News especially. We are at as many fairs and festivals as we can make it out to, and with the generous donation from the Sooke District last year, we were able to purchase the things pictured on this screen with the arrows, so the tent, the table, and the educational pull-up board, both of those as well. And we also now have merchandise like the t-shirt that I'm wearing, and there's sweatshirts as well. So we're getting out there as much as possible, and that's a lot thanks to the district. So we do also have an in-school program that was developed in 2018, which was continued through 2019. And I will quickly just go through these. We worked with the local elementary schools in Sooke. We also worked with the University of British Columbia. I won't go into that report because tonight I would like to focus with what time I have left with the Royal Roads report. So that was given to you guys, I think, beforehand, so hopefully you're a little bit familiar with it. I did just want to point out that they did do a phase 1 in 2017 assessing the bear hazards that would be happening in Sooke. 2018 was the Human Bear Conflict Management Plan, and then last year was the Bear Safe Waste Management Plan. So from that, the students came up with 2 plans. The first one requiring basically the use of the bear-resistant bins and the creation of some bylaws around using those bins. The second plan is a little bit maybe more in depth and has to do with the bins as well, but a more generalized waste management collection system for Sooke in general. So I know that's will definitely take a lot more time than the 5 minutes we have today to figure out. So I would like to focus on plan number 1. We did reach out to Sooke Disposal in Alpine back in 2017 and 2018.
Hold on for a quick sec.
Oh, sure.
Can we have a motion to extend this for another 5 minutes? Okay.
So I can slow down a little.
Okay.
This is a pretty important issue in Sooke, as
Thank you. I appreciate that.
slow down.
So in 2017, we reached out to the Sooke Disposal and Alpine, and then in 2018, these bins were created. These bins are not a new bin just specifically designed for Sooke. They were actually created on the mainland. They're implemented in many communities on the mainland, and they are considered very successful on the mainland. So we're happy to have access to these bins now in Sooke, at least for Alpine customers. This is an option. So my recommendation, I guess, would be to propose a plan to you. As far as Wildlife Sooke goes, we would like to purchase or rent some bins for approximately 250 Sooke residents for the year of 2020. They are rentable from Alpine for about $3.50 a month. So that would be about $42 a year per home. So at $42 per year per home, at 250 bins, that would be about $10,500. And so because of that, I will graciously ask you to consider increasing the amount of funds that you currently provide to the program to the $10,000 annually if possible. Now, second plan, if 1 and 2 don't work, I was actually just reached out to last week by WildSafe BC, and WildSafe BC would like the District of Sooke to consider becoming one of their communities, so a WildSafe community. And they reached out to me and said, you know, the deadline is February 3rd, but we've been following up on your Facebook and website about everything that you've been doing in your community, and your values seem to match quite well with ours, and we would be interested in you becoming a WildSafe community if that's something you're interested in. So the benefit of doing that is that the WildSafe BC program would cover costs for a staff member. They would have WBC insurance. They would be able to fund all the educational materials, and we would then have consistency across all of the WildSafe communities, like the ones on the mainland, and there's a few on the island already. The only, or some of the downsides we would to also consider would be that we would possibly lose some of that unique to Sooke program charm that we currently Wildwise has. We do right now run like the calendar event, and you know, we have these T-shirts and my in-school program and things like that. If we were to continue on the WildSafe BC route, then we might have to change or alter some of those things. So just something to consider anyway when we discuss if this is something we would like to pursue. I think that's all of the information I have to share with you. But I know that that's a lot of it. We probably have to discuss at least what we would like to. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, you mentioned become a member of WildSafe BC. You know what that costs us as a district?
Yep, as a district, they require at least $4,000 as an entrance fee per year. And if we continue on the funding route that Wildwise has been on for the last few years, that shouldn't be a problem. But they do require, yeah, a minimum of $4,000 to be considered a part of their program. But they would allow us to stand alone financially or not stand alone, but continue to raise our own funding as well if that's something that we would like to have. Sooke-specific events or smaller operations, we could still do that as well. But they would just supply, you know, pay for a staff member and the materials.
What would be your preference from the Sooke? I mean, no, I'm putting you on the spot. I understand that. But
yeah.
I guess the part that got me thinking about it is our unique to Sooke program. Mm-hmm. And we see time and time again here is that sometimes we use other people's bylaw and we are unique here. We're in a different position, and sometimes when we're lumped in with the big picture, things are lost for us. So I would be deciding whether we're better off to look after our own backyard and not be involved with the bigger picture because we get lost in it. So
yeah.
Just some thoughts.
I definitely see that point as well, and that thank you for having the confidence in us to continue the program the way that we have.
Well, I tell you the truth, I'm just looking through this, and I wish I'd given it more time earlier on, all 123 pages of it. But I did stop on, you know, some of the things that we could do as a municipality, a district. And we do not have the right bylaws in place, and we do not have the right aids to help. And I'm plagued by bears every year, and I'm sure other people are too. And this interests me very much. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm curious about the 10,500 for the bins, mostly because it's for 250 homes, and obviously we have way more than that. So that seems to be, you know, the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And I'm not sure how effective that would necessarily be, or how you anticipate distribution, or how exactly is that going to work to actually have an impact.
So my original thought was that we could use those bins sorry. Yeah, my original thought was that we could use those bins for a starter as a trial period in the bear hotspots where we know that the bears have, been maybe more of an issue in the past. For example, in mobile park homes where people don't have access to a garage where they can properly store their garbage. And it's not that the residents are trying to attract the bears to those areas, but the truth of the matter is they're getting there. The bears are attracted. They're getting into the side of their mobile or into the little sheds that they might have, and that's not to their fault. They just don't have the space for it. And in those cases, I think these bins could be really beneficial, when residents are trying to do the right thing, but they don't have an option. And this would be a really good example of giving them an option on how to be more bear-wise, basically. So, and these bins have been proven on the mainland to be pretty successful. So I'm thinking that if we started by putting them out in the areas where we know the bears are causing the most grief or where they're having the most issues, then that would be a really good start to tackling this issue.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why only alpine bins. I use Sooke Disposal and have been very impressed with their service.
Yeah.
And I would like to see them given the same opportunity as Alpine to supply the bins.
Definitely, we have reached out to them on several occasions, so if you have any pull with them and would be able to get them to contact us, I have tried a couple different times on phone and email and that sort of thing, and I haven't gotten any response, and Alpine responded right away. So that's really the only reason we went with them, is because they responded, and they didn't just respond, but they came out and met with us and came up with the design and the prices, and it was all very quick. Sooke Disposal we just haven't heard back from, but we would be more than happy to work with them in the future if that's something that they would like to do. But yeah, I agree. It would be great to have both companies, not even just for their business sake, but also just getting more bins out there. Yeah.
You've given us a lot here
Yes.
on short notice. This whole Wild Safe BC with a February 3rd deadline, and council's attitude is we don't necessarily like making motions on the fly, i.e. without giving it all due consideration. So I'm assuming Wild Safe BC would be happy to sign us up next year.
They absolutely would. Yeah.
Okay.
They reached out to me. Yeah, just last week I met with them on the 15th.
Right.
So it was kind of a last-minute thing, but
Yeah. And the key piece there would seem to be that paid employee.
yes.
who- yeah.
And the materials too, because then the budget wouldn't be coming
Right.
from us to supply those.
Right. So the Wildwise does meet with district, you meet quarterly, I think it is, with
We try,
with our
yeah.
Director of Parks and our CMP
Yes.
and Conservation Services. Have they had a chance to absorb this recommendation you brought forward tonight?
Not yet, not from
Okay.
the Wild Safe perspective, no. It
Okay,
was
the Wild
all-
Safe or the bins?
Oh,
What
the
about
bins.
bin proposal?
Yeah, the bins we met about in December. It was a relatively small meeting, our working group meeting, so we didn't have a full capacity
Yeah.
meeting. But I think either option would be a good option. However, I think option one would be an easier task to set for 2020 anyway. Yeah, and then see
Yeah.
what we would like to work towards in the
Yeah.
upcoming years, what works, what doesn't, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, the other, a missing link with that committee was that the late Councillor Parkinson was a council appointee to that,
Yes.
to your group. So I guess in the future, we need to find one of us to step in so that we can effectively represent you on council.
I'd be interested in taking that on, but we won't be able to tonight.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Councillor Beddoes met a bear face to face.
He was on one side of the window and I was on the other.
So he knows a thing or two.
Rubber bullets.
Pots and pans work well.
And as much as I'm a total fan, I would also like to see your annual budget. Like you're asking for us for $10,000 now, but we
Yes.
don't really understand
For the
where
bins.
your other sources of
Right.
funding.
Okay.
So it would be useful. I think at the Transition Sooke AGM, you present your annual
I will be,
financials.
yes.
Yes, okay.
We haven't gotten any outside funding since 2017, or 2018, sorry.
Yeah.
So we got one grant back in 2018 from Lush, but everything else since then has been from the district
Oh, it has,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
exclusively.
Because we
Yeah.
agreed last year, previous council, to an annual line item of $7,000 over the next 5 years.
Right.
So you'll get 7,000 minimum this year, okay. So my final comment would be that, thank you for introducing this material, and to the Royal Road students, that's a pretty fantastic report. It's a lot of, it really is, and very useful for strategies, as proving successful in other communities. It's just that at this moment, we have a notice of motion tonight for a wildlife management strategy that this perhaps falls into in some way. The Climate Action Committee, Councillor Beddoes has made a motion for municipal waste management service, and this too would fit in. And so do we receive your report for information with thanks at this point and with a commitment to continue to look at these issues? Yes, Rachel.
Through your worship, just a suggestion could be to, because the community grant program deadline got extended till March 15th, so that's another mechanism to potentially get some additional information that you might be looking for is, I know they're a line item, but if they're looking for increased funding, they could fill out the template there, and then that would
For the
also.
bins, you mean? Like,
For the
For
the increase that you're looking
I
for
see.
between the current line item amount and up to
Okay.
the $10,000 could be an option to help give you some more information on more specifics.
okay.
Just a thought.
Is that allowable if one has a line item already to also?
Well, I don't know that it would be necessarily getting a community grant for it, but it's just a form and a template to provide them some additional information if you want to consider increasing the line item funding.
Right.
So it's
right.
just an established form and would
Yeah.
come in the same template that the community grant funding comes in, so
Okay.
just an option
Yeah,
to consider.
Thank you.
okay. Any other comments from any of us? Councillor
I'd
Beddoes?
be willing in sometime in the future to have a notice of motion that we appoint somebody to this group as a liaison, and it would be, you can come back with something a little more concrete rather than running through 123 pages, one of us knowing
Yeah.
a little bit about how the bylaws work. So I think that would be a step one, is get a representative with you again. And then when the bear season is upon us once again, we'll be inundated with calls, but I'd be willing to do that.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I guess in all of this, it looks to me like $4,000 sounds like a really good deal for the backing of a large organization that, provides full-time staff and all the rest. It seems like a really,
Yeah.
but you look for, the issues that might be in the background, and I don't feel like I've got the information to actually judge on that. So at this point, I'd be really curious how to get that information, actually, is what it boils down to.
Yeah.
I guess what have other communities' experiences been with this particular organization or being, a representative? What would be the difference exactly between what we have now and what would be provided? Would there be any restrictions in terms of, how we move forward with the wildlife management strategy, which I'm bringing forward, later today?
Right.
So just that kind of stuff. It's difficult to say yes
I
without
know.
knowing what you're getting yourself into.
Definitely. Yeah.
And right now, I certainly don't feel like we have that information quite.
Would it be beneficial if I was to reach out to WildSafe again and with these questions, and maybe not by the February 3rd deadline, but in the next few months, and then come back and say, if they had a concrete kind of outline of exactly what the program would look like in Sooke, and then come back and say, do we want to do this for 2021, and then go from there.
I suspect that any additional information on how they
Would
would
be good.
operate and what it would look like would really help in the decision.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so it looks like we're in a good position here. We have this workshop coming up on committees, so I think at that point we can lock in a representative for you
Perfect.
at Wildlife Sooke's working group. So That is February what? 3rd? Ah, well, we'll nominate you. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, so just to clarify, we don't want to go ahead with Plan 1 or Plan 2 then from the roads?
Not without further information. So
About the
perhaps
bins?
you could work with, in the absence of one of our councillor appointees, with Laura Hooper, and assemble your request in written form so that we can absorb it and give it some contemplative thought. Councillor McMath.
We're also discussing budget as well, so it could be brought up there as well. And then I don't think Councillor Beddoes has to be an official liaison to attend a meeting.
Well, I was just about to make that.
Yeah.
Okay. When do you meet next?
February the 2nd. That's a Sunday. It's not our working group meeting, but it's, no. Okay, well, yeah, we can exchange.
Yeah, I'd be willing to work with you,
Thank you.
out of this meeting and come up with something and better inform council as to where we can go with this. And sure, that sounds like a good plan.
Great.
And you've impressed me how thorough you are too. So when someone has put all this work in and the passion you have, it's a little easier to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay. So over to Ms. Gray as the acting Chief Administrative Officer for report.
Okay, thank you, through your worship. This is just a short and sweet one, as Deputy Mayor stole a little bit of my speaking points. It's fine. So yeah, I just wanted to give a brief update on the open house and kind of where everything's at with the budget, because that's been the big ticket item in the last week or so. So the final count was 58 people showed up at the open house, and it was pretty steady every hour. We were kind of tracking how many people were showing up every hour, so it was pretty steady, obviously a little slower around the dinner hour, but between 2 and 8, it was a steady flow of people coming in, so that was pretty exciting. Obviously the hot ticket stations were the engineering and parks and wastewater. So they got a lot of action. Fire definitely had some action too. And so overall, the consensus was obviously nobody wants a tax increase, but I think they appreciated the opportunity to come out and find a bit more information about the product, about the projects that we're anticipating for 2020. And on the way out, we had created a little exit survey just to kind of, how'd you hear about us? Did you feel like you found more information? So 33 people completed that, and out of that, 31 were more or less positive. Again, nobody wants a tax increase, but they felt like they had more information than when they came. And big check for how did you hear about us? The road sign has been a huge success for the small investment that it was to rent that for the week. And as far as the survey goes, updated numbers are now, because we changed the sign to say fill our survey, as it's open till tomorrow. Over 200 applicants now have completed. Pardon me? Tomorrow, Wednesday. So yeah, it's open till Wednesday, because then we need to consolidate the information. So then after that's complete, we'll consolidate all that information into a report, and it'll be presented to council on the February 3rd special council meeting. And there was a section to include comments, so there's over, I think, 90 comments so far that have been included in there. So again, overall consensus is people just want some more information on the projects, and I think that'll give us some good information after the budget gets passed to how to message these projects and the benefits they're providing to the community. The projects that end up in the budget will kind of give you guys some good ammunition of what we need to talk about and the benefits that we need to highlight if these projects end up making it into the final budget. So that was the gist of it.
Question from Councillor McMath.
Do you think people truly understand why the tax is being increased? Or do you think they came here and just they saw projects and they think that it's all going in one pool and that it all comes from the same fund, and they would take anecdotal lines from that experience and still have like a negative narrative for it? Or do you think that the general population of Sooke truly understands why there's a tax increase? Do you think we need to do more like communication and education?
For sure. Yeah, so I think there was a small pocket of people that kind of understood it once it was explained a little clearer of what was happening. And, I explained reserve funds to some folks. So, some of the projects, they're like, that's a big project. But I'm like, but we're getting a grant for 80% of that. So our part's only this part. So just kind of explaining some of that.
Yeah, because people see things like, oh, the fire department has a new truck, and they think that they paid for it, and they didn't. Right? Like, there's different options
Yeah,
and
so
things
like,
that, yeah.
yes, so I think that is definitely something that will give us some good speaking points to kind of work on for 2020 throughout kind of the year. We're going to try and be out there more in 2020, like have a booth at Canada Day or other things like that, just to kind of get the feedback from the residents earlier in the year. It's kind of hard to, we're kind of near the end of the process, not that obviously the budget is final, but to really kind of make some change and make some recommendations to council. We're already into 2020 now, so getting out earlier in 2020 into the community before the 2021 draft is created, I think is going to go a long way to getting engagement from the public and getting people to understand. And, I love these comments. While they're not all positive, to me they're constructive. Majority of them are constructive.
Negative and bad is constructive feedback.
Exactly, yeah. So, there's only a couple really ones that we're dismissing those because there's just straight up rude, but most of them are constructive, like, I need more information on this. So, we can take that under advisement and revamp our messaging and just make sure people are understanding more the benefits of these projects and what they're doing. So, I think coming in, most people didn't really know much, and then when they left, people understood it a little bit more. So I consider that a win from where we started from last year.
When you report back to council, are you including every single comment and recommendation and suggestion that was made?
I'm going to be meeting with Jen after the budget, or after the survey closes, to kind of talk about that. Some of them were pretty nasty, so I don't really...
I would like to see all of them.
So we were kind of wondering of putting them in themes potentially.
I think
Yeah, we haven't really finalized or determined if we're going to put every comment verbatim kind of out for the public. It is an anonymous survey, so obviously we won't know for sure who they came from. But
yeah, the rude ones, maybe don't send those to the public, but I would like to see them all.
Yeah.
And then also, I think that the community has a sense of, like, there's no point in going because we've already made a decision.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I
I
think-
really want to make sure that it's all represented, and so that they can see that, and then it's discussed, and so that their participation and their engagement is valuable. And then I think that would bring more people in next time too.
For sure, and that was the message we were trying to echo to anyone coming by, stopping at the finance booth for sure, and I know the other departments were too, is just like, this is just the first draft. We throw something on a piece of paper and it gets talked about, and then we come up with the final version. So this isn't the one that's going to be adopted. The sense is like, this is our dream wish list if we could have everything, and then that gets pared down into the reality of what we can actually accomplish in 2020 and how much we want to pay to accomplish those things. And so, yeah, I think some better education and kind of communication around what these projects are, where they are, what the benefits of them are, and how we're funding them will kind of go a long way to people feeling like they're a little bit more engaged and have a voice in it. But again,
And how a trip to Japan is not paid for by any of the taxpayers of
exactly.
Sooke.
It makes, that you leave out certain things, but at least if we kind of have our narrative out there, that'll get the public. They can't say they didn't know, and it's right there. And I feel like doing the survey was, if we didn't know what we were going to get, I considered if we got 100 responses, it was going to be a success. And now we're sitting at over 200 with still 2 days to go. So I think any feedback we've gotten is more than we've had since I've been here. So it's nice to see that and be able to respond and tailor messaging going forward so that people can find something different than they want to question, because now they understand this piece of something that they didn't understand before.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, like Councillor Math, I'm interested to see these results from these 200 individuals who, of course, are a fractal of the 10,000 adults in Sooke who pay taxes. And these people have elected us as council to make some decisions and to work with staff to come up with sensible, progressive, logical expenditures. And I don't think any community has a huge number of people who understand the budgetary process of their own household, let alone their own municipalities. This is a $24 million budget that we're working with here. But yeah, I'm really interested to see the comments, and particularly the survey results for some of those capital expenditures, such as Memorial Wall or the Bluff staircase and other things, which I think that I'm really interested in. But some of the four-letter word responses are, that's fine. No one likes death nor taxes, I think someone once said. period. It's the coldest night of the year here in council chambers. So,
Ellen Lors. With the survey, if I may, just to add to that, I thought the survey was kind of sucky. It didn't really give you opportunity. It had 3 options, but the options weren't really, like, you couldn't say, I don't think this should be at all. You couldn't say that. So it really wasn't objective enough. Yes, it was too weak. So, yeah. So I don't think you got the right answers. I wanted to speak to the agricultural ALC information about increasing to 7,000. The amount of monies that are garnered in the ALC. That'd be great if but in this it isn't just ALC property. If you read the ALC Act, it includes all agricultural property. And due to the fact that a lot of the agricultural properties in Sooke are smaller lots, you're asking for them to come up with $7,000, which is a meager income anyway. But that's not the issue, as I feel, and I don't think there's been proper consultation with the people that are in the farming community. There's a lack of support for farming industry, period. So that hasn't been addressed. The interaction with the stakeholders, that should be addressed. ALC properties and agricultural properties have to make more money than poverty income. And we talked about this before, and we wanted to talk to the ALC about it, about allowing people to have income off of their properties that is not necessarily agricultural, but if you want to keep that land, you're not going to keep it by saying, well, you have to make 7,000 or 10,000. That's just not meaningful income. If there has to be rental, people should be able to rent. B&Bs, that's being taken away from the ALC, extra income because you can't have another home. Yeah, because you have to have full-time work. And even if you have a small lot, a smaller property, in order to come up with
Maya Tate is whispering in my ear and saying their 2 minutes are up.
well,
I'm sorry.
and I just, if you have, this, to make that 7,000, it takes full-time employment. Full-time work, rather, if you're doing just fruit and vegetables. And there isn't the support, because there isn't the support around animals, there isn't support for slaughterhouses or any of those kinds of things to support agriculture. Those are the things that have to be addressed. And just increasing the income and taking away opportunities from ALC land is the wrong approach, in my opinion.
Any other public comment? Yes.
There we go. Now I'm on. Melanie Cunningham, Sooke Shelter Society, and I'm here to talk to you about the correspondence you've already received, and you're going to discuss a bit later on about the coldest night of the year event that we're putting on here in Sooke. Most of you know that it's to help the homeless population here in Sooke. It is a major fundraiser for us, and we would like to have and be honoured to have Sooke District approval for this event. We'd like to put their stamp on it to the tune of $500 if you can afford it, and we would like to have someone from District Council to come to the opening ceremonies, and I believe, Jeff, you already indicated that you would be at the event, unless you've changed your mind, as a walker?
I'll be there as a walker.
You'll be there, okay.
I'll be there.
Okay, oh, excellent, that's wonderful news, thank you. You could rock and roll it, Dana. So if anybody wants to volunteer to be our guest speaker to open ceremonies, that would be awesome. Okay, any questions? Any more info needed? No?
Okay, thank you.
We'll extend that off to the mayor, because I think she'd be your... And as for the $500, we have a sponsorship fund. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, we do have a sponsorship policy. Can we deal with that tonight? I don't know what our budget is for it, but...
Yeah, through your worship, in the draft 2020 plan, the sponsorship budget is $2,500. I believe there's been a commitment already from council to sponsor a booth at Sooke, which is approximately $2,000 last year. I'm not sure what this year's costs were exactly. And then, I mean, there's always council contingency and other options to support
Yeah, well,
something like this.
I'd be willing to make a motion that we sponsor, I can't remember what the group for $500. Sooke Shelter Society for $500.
Okay, second by Councillor McGrath. Do we have any discussion of this? Right. So,
You. Can I just ask you to amend the motion to say that the money is to come from the sponsorship account, if that's where it's to come from?
Yeah, I'd be willing to amend my motion that it comes to the sponsorship.
Thank you very much. Oh, you got to vote?
so to just get clarity again, so we have $2,500 in the 2020 sponsorship fund, and this will be the end of our sponsorship monies. We can always go to council contingency for any future sponsorships.
Yes.
So we have the motion on the floor. Let's have a vote. All in favor? There we go. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. And I suppose we're also supposed to show up and get in a cage on behalf, in a jail cell, but we'll do that in warmer weather. Any further comments? Yes, Ms. Thompson.
Hello, I'm Sherry Thompson with Sooke Shelter Society, and I just wanted to make a comment on the agenda of 10.1, the CRD bylaws. I just wanted to let you know that I support consenting to those bylaws for the regional housing. Thank you.
Okay, a second go-round for Ms. Lewis. Mrs. Lewis.
I forgot. I wanted to ask a question with Denwood Properties. I wanted to know if there was an engineer report in regard to the building. Was there ever an engineer's report? No, for the building that the district's asking to have taken down.
I can't answer that, and perhaps our acting CAO has, or the corporate officer?
Yes, no reports have been provided as of yet. What will be done is what's required for the demolition permit, which at this point in time appears to just be a hazardous materials report.
So is it being taken down because or are we requiring it to be taken down because it's structurally unsound? Because if there's no engineer report to say it's structurally unsound, I'm trying to figure out why we're asking it to be taken down.
There are several reasons. There is a structural issue that the owner was asked to address, and he's had an extension to the original deadline to provide all of that information. He's chosen not to, so the remedial action order that council has issued will be confirmed tonight, and the process will be undertaken.
I guess that's why I was asking if there's an engineer report to say if it's structurally unsound.
I certainly believe that Ms. Mills, the bylaw officer, in her initial reports, was very clear that it was structurally unsound.
Is she an engineer?
She is not an engineer.
Right, that's my question.
Councillor Beddoes.
I believe when we first tackled this, we put the onus on the owner to come back to us with an engineering report to show that it is sound.
No, okay.
So, and my understanding is that they have come back with nothing. So we gave him lots of time, lots of warning, and if he feels that it is structurally sound, it's not much for him to prove it to us, and that would change it, but he has not done so.
Oh,
To my knowledge.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm thinking myself, I'm just asking this because it was me, and I've been living in a house for, say, 40 years, and somebody said, oh, your house is structurally unsound, you have to take it down. You have to prove that it's structurally sound? That's just a question.
Councillor
I don't know how it works.
St. Pierre first, and then Councillor Beddoes.
One of the reasons that this went forward the way it did was because we had visual inspections that showed that some beams were misaligned and that it looked to be unsound and that it looked dangerous. That's why this actually, came forward the way it did. At this point, it was up to the owner to actually prove that it was sound, and that didn't happen. Largely, I believe, because the cost of actually dealing with the problems with the building would actually exceed any sort of profit to be made on them. And so I think that's why it's been left in the district's hands at this point in time. And the cleanup. That wasn't the only issue. There were a number of bylaw infractions, but that was the major one, as you pointed out.
Okay. Thank you.
The order was based on structural integrity, fire inspection, review, and life safety issues within the building. Unsightly premises as well. For the tough question? We have a consent agenda with the correspondence. Can I have a motion to receive that? Councillor McMath has moved it and Councillor St. Pierre seconded. All approve? Okay. The remedial action update for 2076 Otter Point Road. Do we have a report from staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a very brief one. So the time has come and passed for the property owner to undertake the remedial action requirements. So this motion is in front of you tonight, basically just reaffirming council's direction or to undertake the remedial action order, and that the works would be undertaken in accordance with the district's purchasing policy. So unfortunately, it's a little bit of a lengthy motion for you to read out, but
Questions from council?
sorry, if I may, through your worship, I was just able to access the original report that came forward on September 9th. And it does state that the chief building inspector, there was a support beam that has dropped down approximately 18 to 24 inches inside the building. And based on that information, the structural integrity has been compromised. So it's that, along with a number of other issues in the building, that the remedial action order has been undertaken.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I don't believe I need to read the whereases, but I'd like to move that the district of Sooke now therefore is open, retain a contractor or contractor selected by the district staff in accordance with the district's purchasing policy to fulfill the remedial action requirement. By its staff and contractors, enter onto the property at 2076 Otter Point Road, Sooke, BC, and legally described as PID 005983-886, Lot 1, Section 3, Sooke District, Plan 5692, except part in Plan VIP 86005, the property, and fulfill the remedial action requirements at Denwood's expense. And C, recover the cost incurred from the Denwood as a debt, which debt may be added to the taxes for the property as taxes in arrears if the debt remains unpaid on December 31st of the year as it was incurred.
You have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Beddoes has seconded. So we discussion at this point? Go to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed.
Your mic.
All right, Royal Roads University South Island Studio Initiative. I don't think we need a report on this, or do we?
It's up to you. I'm
Yeah,
not
we'd like to
sure-
hear from you. Yes, thank you.
I just put together a little bit of information about what the actual program is about, which I don't think was really clear in the documentation that's been provided with the report. So I can just read out the little blurb I put together for you. So as indicated in the letter of commitment, the suggested South Island Studio program is modeled after City Studio Vancouver, which is a collaboration between Simon Fraser University and the City of Vancouver. City Studio is a proposed innovation hub between the District of Sooke and Royal Roads University, where district staff, students, faculty, and the community would work together to design experimental projects that make the community more sustainable, livable, and enjoyable. The model project suggests convening once a year with district staff to identify and develop project concepts that further the district's strategic goals. Projects are matched with courses, ensuring a strong fit with the district needs and faculty expertise. As part of the coursework, students work together with district staff to co-create pilot projects for the benefit of the community. Final projects are launched by students as experiments and pilot projects in the community to test what works. The results are presented at a celebratory showcase where students, district staff, citizens, and elected officials connect to make these solutions permanent. To provide an idea of the types of projects they have undertaken, this is the Vancouver one, but they've had Tell a Friend 2, which is an integrated marketing campaign for recruiting volunteers. Eco Pouch, which is an environmental alternative to traditional food storage products, and Ugalicious, which is a no-waste, great taste, raising awareness of food waste by using unsold produce to create nutritious meals, just to name a few. So it does sound like a rather exciting venture to undertake.
Okay. Councillor McMath and St. Pierre.
I'd like to move the motion that council authorize the mayor to sign a letter of commitment to Royal Roads University in support of the South Island Studio Initiative, and that the CAO be the primary contact.
Be seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Discussion? Councillor St. Pierre?
Through your worship to staff, I'm just curious, it doesn't sound like there's any actual financial cost, and there is a certain amount of time commitment, but we're accessing the resource of the university to move forward with projects of interest in our strat plan. Is that correct?
Not at this point in time. Again, this is just a commitment on behalf of the district. I can't really see anything. I mean, there would be some staff time involved, but I don't see any financial dollars being contributed at this point in time.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
I think that would depend on the project. Like if we're looking for a physical thing to be built or something, then we would be responsible for the cost of that. But we would get something for it.
Okay. Yeah, and from my perspective, tonight's Bearwise management plan that we've received from Royal Road students is an example of the kind of work that can be delivered at minimal cost to no cost. And the Sooke baseline study that we'll be receiving at the end of April from the hospitality and tourism students is another example. So, yeah, I'm wholly in favor. So can we have a vote, please? All in favor? Okay, back we go. 9.3 is an invitation from Natori, Japan, that counseled, okay. This is an, okay, council. All right. Ms. Musata, do you have?
I don't really have a whole lot to add to the actual report there, but as a result of a recent visit from the delegation from Natori, Japan, they have invited Mayor Tate and one other individual. They are paying the cost of doing so. There has been a question that arose that I can provide an answer to. At this point in time, there is no expectation, nor have there been any discussion that this would be expected to be reciprocal moving forward in the future. At this point, it is a gift from the city of Natori, and in that spirit is where the way it's been presented.
Councillor McMath.
I have a question, through your worship. Do we have to decide tonight who the participant is?
Well, I don't think it can wait until the next council meeting because it's only 6 short weeks away and travel arrangements do need to be made.
Okay.
So if it's possible, I would suggest that it is. I mean, we could always have a special meeting if need be, but nothing in the near future is
Okay.
planned, so.
Okay. Then I would like to move that council direct staff to make arrangements for Maya Tate and Sarah Temple to travel to Natori, Japan in March of 2020 with associated expenses to be paid by the city of Natori.
Discussion? Councillor St. Pierre.
When I looked at the Sister City program, I noticed that there are a large number of, actually, I think they're all Japan, sister cities. But it was pointed out by Councillor Jeunesse that Sooke actually has an established relationship with a sister city in the U.S. just across Port Townsend. And
From before incorporation, it goes back years, right?
it does not seem that these are exclusive relationships or commitments, so it's not really a problem. What I was curious about was how we would actually best benefit from these relationships. I know that Natori had a terrific earthquake, probably has experience dealing with emergency preparedness in ways that we don't. I'm curious about what sort of exchanges of information, and I'll be interested to hear the results of the trip in terms of those sorts of things.
Through your worship, I do know that we have already been in contact with the Journey Middle School as their students are traveling at the time that Mayor Tate has been invited. And it's the expectation that she will actually be part of most of those activities. My understanding is they have all of their days scheduled with activities and that she would actually be joining in all of that as well.
So I'll comment that the city of Victoria, for example, has 4 sister city relationships. So we have Port Townsend, which is the Black Ball relationship, and then here's the Pacific Rim Ring of Fire relationship. And yeah, so we have an Journey Middle School students have been going for a decade now, I think, on exchange. Are their students coming back to see us?
They typically come, they trade off every second year. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how long they've been coming from, but it's been established for a program for a while now.
Well, I think it's quite an honor for little old Sooke to be asked to, Councillor McMath, did you have something to say? Oh, you're itching your neck. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, the only thing that bothers me about this is the carbon footprint. We're sort of, as council, not supposed to be increasing the carbon footprint. Now, I say that because I'm flying down to Mexico next week, but that's about the only thing that bothers me on this. It's a nice invitation, yeah, don't have a problem. I'll vote for it.
A night of unanimity so far. Okay, item 9.4 is the AVICC, Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Resolution Submission. And I'll pass this to Councillor St. Pierre.
This is the District of Sooke bring forward the following resolution to be considered as a joint resolution with the Comox Valley Regional District at AVICC. And I would like actually at this point to make a friendly amendment. Was that received by, I just sent it as an email right towards the beginning of the meeting. Okay. So the friendly amendment that I'm looking for is directly in line with the comments by Mrs. Lewers, but was actually prior to those comments, I'd like to point out. And that's the Ministry of Agriculture, through its Farmers Institute, supports small-scale farmers to increase their profitability and production levels. along with the resolution. Now, the resolution, it deals with farm tax harmonization and reads, whereas the relocalization of our food system is necessary to reduce our carbon footprint and increase resiliency in local communities, and whereas the threshold to maintain farm class status for properties between 2 and 10 acres is 2,500, has not changed since 1993, making British Columbia one of the lowest thresholds in Canada. Therefore, be it resolved that the province of British Columbia work with BC Assessment to establish a minimum $7,000 threshold for farms of all sizes to be phased in over 3 years for new participants, and to implement a program of continued farm status for retired farmers, and that the Ministry of Agriculture, through its Farmers Institute, supports small-scale farmers to increase their profitability and production levels, is what I would like it to read as. Is it appropriate to motivate immediately, or what do we?
Please, okay, Councillor Beddoes, and then back to...
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I had a farm 18 years ago, and the threshold was $2,500, which was low. I just had to raise some meat chickens to meet that. The only thing I don't like going to 7,000. I'd be happier to go to 5,000 than 7,000. So I don't know whether we can put that in this motion. I mean, we're just accepting what these other people have said, but I'm not in favor of 7,000. 5,000 would be more realistic.
Councillor St. Pierre and then McMath.
Okay. As it is, I expect that this is a very contentious resolution. There's a Facebook page from a group of people, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of responses, definitely not in favor. There's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation already being put out in terms of what this actually represents. First of all, it's not actually the District of Sooke raising taxes. That's simply not the case. What's happening at this point in time is that, well, first of all, there's a process involved. This would actually have to go through AVICC and then through UBCM and then to the province, and then they would discuss it, and try and figure out what to do with BC Assessment. So it's not actually simply increasing taxes. What's more, what it is actually doing is simply setting the taxes to what other property owners are paying. So for example, if you have a large yard and you put down a beautiful big home, you pay significant property taxes, and you pay them so you can actually receive the services of the district in all sorts of ways, sewers, wastewater treatment, so on and so forth. It's actually paying the cost of having that property. What's happening a lot right now is that because Sooke has mostly, as was pointed out, smaller parcels of farmland, instead of people showing up to farm, they're actually very cleverly, and I don't blame them one bit, putting down a large home, taking in a crop of hay, selling a few eggs, and not actually paying the taxes on a large home on a beautiful big property. But realistically, they're not producing much in the way of food either. They really aren't. They're not farming, they're simply decreasing their taxes. And I would do it too, because we've actually provided a beautiful loophole to do it. This is actually bringing this so that the people in Sooke, whether they be on a large property or small property, have deep pockets or not so deep pockets, are actually paying a reasonable share of their taxes for the services that the district is providing. What's more, what happens in this particular situation is that our food security is at risk. We have way more horses in Sooke than we have cows. And that's because these parcels are actually being used for large homes. And that's what's encouraged with our present tax scheme. Our tax situation at this point in time does not actually garner the revenues the district should be receiving, and actually encourages large homes on small amounts of acreage, and that's about all Sooke has, and our food security in Sooke is at risk because of it. Once you've actually put down a $500,000 home on 4 or 5 acres, that is now $1 million property. There's no small farmer, there's no young farmer that's going to buy that and sell carrots and pay a mortgage on it. There's no way. That's not happening. So we're actually having this land being taken out of production. Now, as it happens, I do believe that the people that have these parcels are in a good position to lease that land. And if we can actually get through to the ALC on some of this stuff, to potentially put back into place secondary suites so they can actually hire people to do farming if they want to. But either way, to maintain their farm class status, but simply to produce more food. They have the resources. If they can raise horses, they can actually have cows or a garden. And I think that they can actually produce more food. And if they have an incentive to do so, I think they will. Now, it's not going to be very popular. I expect to take a lot of flack. And if we vote for this, I expect us all to take a lot of flack. But I do believe that if we want food security and a certain amount of fairness in terms of our tax structure, we have to look at something like this at some point. And I'm putting this forward at this point in time.
Councillor McMath and then Beddoes.
I'm just not sold that this is the appropriate tool to do what you're looking for. And it just seems a little bit like it's making the bar higher for the smaller farms, and it's not going to be a very strong deterrent to what you're looking to target, which is the bigger homes. I just don't think this is the right tool for this, and so far, I'm just not sold. You don't have my vote yet.
Who's next?
Yeah, I'd just like a little clarification from staff through the chair. My understanding is when I was applying for, I had ALR land and I had some animals. One was a horse too, by the way, but that was different. The house is taxed the full value. It's only the land that you get a reduced tax on. So, I mean, Councillor St. Pierre was saying that they're getting away with cheaper taxes on their house. The house is taxed as a house. It doesn't matter whether it's a farmhouse, it's the same as my house. So the only tax saving, I believe, and I just need you to clarify that for me if you can, the only tax saving is on the land value itself. And I think it's like a half or something. And that's my understanding of it when I was back in the day when I was a farmer, how that worked. My house was valued as my neighbor's house, didn't matter.
Through your worship, I'm not 100% sure. I would have to look at some specific properties to see how the data comes in. I'm not 100%, I don't want to, I'm not sure.
I'm pretty
Maybe-
sure, actually.
Yeah, so I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, through the chair, I was just, you know, when Councillor St. Pierre said that these people were getting reduced house taxes, they're not. It's proper. It's only the property that is in the ALR, to my knowledge.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm not sure about that, mostly because the resolution also carries, there's also a section in the resolution about maintaining farm tax status for retired farmers, specifically on their homes. And that was actually, this is not actually wording that came from me. This is actually from a larger report that I believe was done through Kwantlen Polytechnic University. So I'm not clear myself. I do think that there might be some truth to what you're saying. I would need clarification myself. But I'm under the impression that there is a significant tax reduction even on the home. And I would point out that the actual tax reduction is much more than you might expect. The first year that we purchased our own farm, we paid $7,000 in taxes before we started producing. Our taxes are now 1/10 of that. So it's not a small amount. It's actually a very significant amount. We're looking at, you know, on 10 acres, probably losing anywhere around $5,000 to $6,000 in tax revenue, and that's significant. In terms of Councillor McMath, you had a question as to whether or not this was actually the appropriate way to approach this.
An effective.
An effective way of approaching this. As it happens right now, it's interesting that if you are farming under 2 acres, $2,500 is not enough. You have to produce $10,000 in farm revenue in order to actually achieve farm class status. So it's been determined that on 2 acres, we want $10,000 to prove that you're a real farmer. But on 2 to 10 acres, you want $2,500. Now that's encouraging people to say, well, I'm not going to go after the 2-acre parcel, I'm going to go after the 10-acre parcel. It's just smarter. I get more land, and I have a better chance of getting my taxes lower by selling a crop of hay. It's not actually, what we have right now is a very odd, unreasonable situation that doesn't actually encourage people to grow food. So for example, on the 2 acres, I would rather that go down to 7,000 so that those people will be encouraged to reach farm class status and produce the food. Same for 2 to 10 acres. And the taxing is one of the best ways that we do have to encourage certain types of behavior. There aren't a lot of other tools in our toolkit to do this. And I've been thinking about this a whole lot. And I'd be happy to find some other ways.
Councillor Beddoes.
I'm very confused. You're telling me that anybody that has a farm of under 2 acres has to pay more than somebody from 2 acres to 10 acres?
Yep.
Well, that doesn't seem fair. And I believe staff had something back for me on my previous question.
Sorry, yes, I just confirmed on BC assessment site, because again, I didn't want to misquote it, but it's the land associated with farm use is farmland. All farm structures used in connection with the farm operation, including the farmer's dwelling, will be classified as Class 1 residential, which means it would be, the buildings would be taxed as Class 1 residential, which is a different classification than the farm land.
I have a couple of comments. That Councillor St. Pierre is bringing this forward with Arzina Hamir, who is a farmer herself, like Councillor St. Pierre. And Ms. Hamir was part of this BC Lanapopham's Advisory Committee for Revitalizing the ALR and ALC, which reported back in the end of 2018. And its recommendation 23 is essentially what you're saying here, is collaborate with BC Assessment to revamp the tax and establish a base threshold of $7,000 for all farm properties up to 10 acres in size. So my suggested friendly amendment to this would be to actually refer to recommendation 23 and say, hey, get on it. But I'd see it's more complicated. Here.
I would point out that Bill C-52 and the other associated bills with this particular report have met with furious resistance because of how they were rolled out in some ways, and because they're actually, in some ways, actually infringing on small farms and their ability to actually be profitable. These things were things that we've addressed with the Ministry, the LC. They're looking for better models. They're willing to look at these sorts of things. I think that in some ways they need support from districts, and we have a financial incentive to do so in order to move forward with further work that is not going to be popular at all. And I know that most people don't actually understand the tax structure in terms of how it works with farmland. They don't understand, for example, this 2 acres and 10,000. They don't realize what's happening. And they don't understand that the district is basically providing services in some cases at a discount for people who really don't need the discount. They'll take advantage of it because it just makes sense and it's a smart thing to do, but they don't need it. And I think that there's good reason to actually provide some incentive to actually start farming. I hope that Council will approve the resolution, but at the same time, I do think that we need to be bringing this forward so that we can actually move forward at some point on this.
Okay, Councillor McMath has a comment.
How come you're not simultaneously lowering the dollar amount for lands that are less than 0.8 hectares?
For one thing, it would actually make it quite complicated, and I think what we're looking for here is a base threshold for what represents someone who's actually farming. And whether it be on 2 acres or 10 acres, $7,000 is a lot to work for, but at the same time, for us, it boils down to 3 or 4 pigs, or for other people, I found that it's about 80 or 90 chickens producing eggs. It's not unreasonable. It can be done on less than 2 acres, easily. But right now, what we have is a complicated system that doesn't actually seem to be fair to anyone.
Right, but your point was that if you people are more incentivized to purchase land that's larger in size because of the dollar amount attached to it. So people are paying $10,000 on land that's less than 0.8 hectares. And they're only being charged $2,500 for more. So you're saying more people are purchasing the larger pieces of land, which make them unattainable for young farmers, potential farmers. So my question to you is, why would you not do both?
Both.
Why would you not lower the 10,000 and increase the 2,500?
That's exactly what this is doing. This is $7,000 for all properties up to 10 acres. So that would include the under 2. It sets a base threshold for what's farming. For under 2 acres, up to 10.
Yeah, but the punishment for the 2,500 is much more than the 10,000. I'm not sure where are you just pulling numbers that sound nice?
No,
I
no,
don't
no,
understand.
no. We're actually coming into alignment with what's happening in the rest of Canada and with the report that was provided to the province. That's all. So they're not numbers pulled out of a hat. They're research. They've been, this is not my research, but it's been done by people who have more time on their hands than I do. In this particular case, really it's about saying that you don't have to make 10,000 if you're under 2 acres, and only 2,500 up to 2 to 10. Instead, it's 7,000 if you're under 2 acres or up to 10.
But why 7?
Don't ask me.
But I am.
Well, the answer would be that that seems to be, as I understand it, what's happening in the rest of Canada.
So Councillor Beto's $5,000 mark is the half of the 10 and double of the 2,000. I'm just curious, like where did you get 7 from?
From the report that that Councillor Bateman was quoting.
But is it just all across Canada? It's not specialized to this area? It's not a local?
Well, it was a document produced for BC, for the BC government.
Okay.
So I could add a couple of quick things. Alberta and Quebec both require a threshold of $10,000. Ontario is at $7,000. So BC has been stuck at this $2,500 mark since 1993. As strategic shift number 3, recommendation 23. Yeah. Councillor Beddoes.
This is a provincial responsibility, is it not?
Yes.
Then I don't really want to deal with it. I couldn't make an intelligent decision here because I'm hearing things all over the place. And like a Standard Lane, I think the Agricultural Land Commission and the BC Assessment are working on this. Let's let them do their job and stay out of it.
Councillor St. Pierre.
It is our job as a district to actually put forward resolutions to AVICC that actually move forward our agenda. It's not our job to make this happen, but it's our job to bring it to their attention and say that this is a priority if we want it to be. So that is our job.
Beddoes.
I'm not clear what you want here, so I'm not going to vote for it.
Okay, no abstentions allowed. Councillor Lajeunesse.
I think in Sooke, there's a lot of agricultural land that is actually nothing but clay. There's a very thin layer of topsoil, and then it's clay. You can't even dig it. And some of those properties have been held for years by families who owned them before the Agricultural Land Commission even came into existence. And to penalize those people is not right, I don't think.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I would point out if they don't actually have farm class status right now, they're not being penalized. So this only affects those properties that are producing a minimum of, say, $2,500. So, for example, in the case of property under between 2 to 10 acres, one of the reasons that becomes really worthwhile is because if you have a few fields, you can hay it, sell the hay, you're done. That's it. So it's easier to actually do that with 10 acres than it is to do that with under 2 acres. But you're not actually producing food for people. In the case of almost any property, if you actually make any effort at farming, even on clay, you can probably reach your 7,000. It just depends on whether or not you're farming or not.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
For people who have to work full-time to sustain themselves and their families, who has time to farm in the evenings?
Sorry,
Councillor St. Pierre. No, that was.
sorry, just to be a bit of a stickler, though, we actually don't have a seconder on the motion yet, which is technically required before we have any discussion. Thank you.
I seconded that because I did read this Councillor St. Pierre's report and also this recommendation in full, which goes on for 4 pages. And one of its key points is the low threshold as currently established supports speculation and the idling of land. So I think this new strategy is to get more fallow ALR into production. It's a response to climate emergency. It's a way to deal with the speculators who. So yeah, I'll be voting in favor of this. Councillor St. Pierre.
I will, cap this off with one comment, and that's just for everybody to think about. We are dealing with a climate crisis. We're only producing about 3% of our food in Sooke. This is part of the reason why. So this is something that we more or less have to address in some way. Otherwise, at some point, we may simply have hungry people. And that's a really dire reality. Okay, we're not really playing around here. Okay, this is for keeps. So we can try and duck it, we can try and move away from it, but these decisions are going to make a difference. I don't actually know that this will get through AVICC, because look at the issues we're having here. But we need to get this out there, and we need to solve this somehow, because otherwise we simply won't have the food we need.
I'll also comment that I spoke with the president of UBCM about this, not about this resolution, but it's a resolution coming out of the Victoria Family Court regarding restorative justice. And her comment was that there are so many resolutions flying through the air and not even making it to the floor, so that if this does not pass tonight, there's also the backup option, which is you go straight to the ministry and you knock on the door and you make your case in person. And she feels that perhaps is best response. I suspect is there a history of these resolutions on tax harmonization? A small one, yeah. So with restorative justice, there's been something in the order of 20 resolutions over the last 30 years. So the feeling is another resolution is pointless. You've got to go out and make the pitch and put the pressure on directly. So anyway, I guess it's time we called a vote on this, shall we? All in favor? We're going to move on to bylaws. The consent of CRD Bylaws 4326 and 4327. So to our corporate for it.
Sure, just to provide you a little bit of a backgrounder on this. The bylaws are required to increase funding for each partner into the regional housing program, and the partners are CRD, BC Housing, and CMHC. They've currently all contributed $30 million, and each one is required to increase that contribution by $10 million for a total of $40 million in order to meet the goal of providing 400 low-income houses. And I believe the number is 253, which are proposed in Sooke alone. The cost to the taxpayer is approximately 61 cents per $100,000 of assessed property value. And to provide an example of that, a $750,000 assessed property would equate to $4.50 tax increase to cover the cost of borrowing. That's all I have to add.
Any questions? All right. Yeah, I'll point out there. Councillor.
What percentage of this money is going to come to Sooke? We're building 250 or so low-income houses now, and I'm assuming that we're getting some assistance with that. So what percentage of this will we end up with?
I can actually answer that question. With the two BC housing projects that are incoming for Drennan and Sooke Road and the other at Charters and Throop, that's a total $67 million investment by Regional Housing First in affordable rental housing in Sooke. So, yeah, there's your answer. 67 million is what we're seeing so far, with possibility of more. But the key here seems to be these shelter rate units. With the increased construction costs on the South Island, the original 90 million that the CRD had assigned is 30 million short of what they need. So they're seeking $10 million for all municipal. The CRD board has approved this, and now they need consent from the municipalities. And the 10 million that the CRD will borrow from the Municipal Finance Authority will be matched by BC Housing and another 10 million from Canada Mortgage and Housing. So this will get us, we currently have 49 shelter rate units coming in, and this allows people who are living at that 375 per month welfare rate to have a roof over their head. So, was that?
I don't have anything further than what's in the attachments that are attached to the report, but I mean, it essentially the 67 million, it's just over 50% of what they're proposing to borrow for the project, so. I don't know if that helps answer the question.
My understanding, we have a member on the CRD board. I assume that they voted for this to come to us, right? So
Yeah.
then I fully support it.
Okay. Councillor,
Sure, I'll move it, sure.
okay.
Right. That council consent to the CRD adopting bylaw number 4326 to amend the land banking and housing service establishment bylaw to update the borrowing amount and bylaw number 4327 to authorize the borrowing of $10 million to fund additional housing units under the Regional Housing First program. I make that motion.
Councillor St. Pierre has seconded it. We'll have a vote. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Point 1 is a notice of motion from Councillor St. Pierre, and this is for consideration tonight, that council directs staff to provide a presentation to familiarize council. Pardon?
You go ahead. No, make the comment, because
I thought we had already done this at a previous meeting. Through your worship to Ms. Mushada.
This was put forward as a notice of motion, I believe it was the end of December 9th. There was, at that time, the CAO recommended that the motion be just kind of put on hold as the new building bylaw that the district is considering will be coming forth to a CAL meeting on February 18th, and the step code will be included in that bylaw and introduced over a phased period. The motion was still made, and there was an error in not bringing it forward on January 9th, which is why it's on tonight's agenda. But the administrative recommendation is still to put the report request on hold until council does receive the building bylaw, because we believe that it will answer most of council's questions.
But this motion, so we already made this motion, so you want us to put it on hold?
It was only put forward for notice. So now you will actually consider the request tonight.
So should we dismiss this motion because we're going to talk about it anyway?
Up to council.
Okay. I make a motion that we dismiss this motion.
thanks.
Sorry. Because it's going to be coming up at that following meeting. So it's just, this is redundant.
Seems that way.
Appreciated, but redundant.
I think I might agree with that unfriendly amendment.
So moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre.
Not this motion, but to dismiss this motion.
Okay, but I just want to confirm. So more or less, the intent of this motion will be carried out on February 18th in a presentation from our building department, correct?
Correct.
So the work's already happening. Fine, that's cool.
All in favor? Okay, that's passed unanimously. I just wanted to note that it was on February 25th, 2019, that we did ask that the BC Step Code be discussed in more detail. So I'm glad that a year later we're getting there. And
Lightning fast.
is there an agenda of discussion items coming up in future committees of the whole? We're having them monthly, aren't we?
We are. We don't have anything that far in advance. We currently have 4 items for the February 18th cow, but I don't have anything scheduled beyond that.
And these will be on the third Tuesday? Is that right?
Yes, because Monday is a stat holiday that week, so the cow's been moved to Tuesday.
Right. Okay, thank you. Motion into the record, please.
Certainly. The council directs staff to work on a comprehensive review of our wildlife management strategy with the input and in collaboration with affected community stakeholders, including the Sooke Nation, the RCMP, organizations dealing with wildlife conservation, farmers, hunters, and other interested parties. That would include Wildwise, of course. This should inform any amendments to the firearm bylaw and happen prior to. And I can speak to that at least briefly.
Just with an understanding that we'll be discussing it fully on February 10th. Yeah.
Discussing what fully on February 10th?
Your notice of motion.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is just new business. Fine. We'll just leave it.
Yeah.
Well, very quickly.
Feel free. I think
I was very impressed with the presentation done by Victoria, the Victoria Hunters Association. The fact that they have expertise to share. I've actually spoken with the RCMP. They really need to be brought in terms of looking at firearm bylaws and in wildlife management. I think that we need to be looking at a comprehensive wildlife management strategy. I think that's what Councillor Beddoes has pointed to in terms of working with Wildwise. I think that before we move forward with any sort of bylaw amendment, we need to look at what our needs are in the community to deal with our wildlife management.
Save some for the 20th.
Yep, that's it. I'm done.
Okay. Councillor Beddoes?
Well, I've talked to some very knowledgeable people on this, and they feel that our whole bylaw should just be rescinded. There's enough protection under the province on firearms, and when it comes to this bylaw, we're not going to send our bylaw officer out for a firearms incident anyways, so it's an RCMP matter. But it's just, we'll discuss it next on the 18th, but if we do, and I don't have a problem studying it, I have to rescind the old bylaw first.
All right, we're moving into correspondence requiring action, which is a misleading statement. It doesn't require action per se. It requires just comment in some cases. So I brought forward both these pieces. I just wanted to update on the enhanced road assessment driving tests for seniors, which Al Jones and his daughter Lynn Hamilton have been lobbying for since 2018. They've been seeking a West Shore driving test center as opposed to having to drive all the way out to Saanich, Mackenzie. And the district has officially requested action. Most recently on April 8th last year, the Premier, our MLA, agrees we need one much closer to Saanich. And the good news I've heard comes from Langford Councillor Lanny Seaton, who says that a commercial business class driving test center is going to be established near the Western Speedway, and that this center is slated to evolve into a full-scale test center in due course. So I don't have any doubts that Langford will get what it wishes there. So the other item is coldest night of the year, and that was spoken to during our public comment period, so just an encouragement for everyone to get out. It's kind of, I did Miles for Millions back in my high school days, and those were 40 kilometers. This back, in the dark ages. So anyway, it's $25 registration fee for everyone, and there will be route marshals, drivers to pick up people if they collapse along the way.
It's a 5-kilometer walk.
It could be 10 kilometers. And the good news is Cam Norris-Jones and his colleagues from the firefighters are going to have a hot chocolate station mid-route. So that'll make it all worthwhile. Okay, Councillor Beddoes?
Just that I managed to beat out the Lions Club to sponsor myself and one other person to go in this walk, and I'm actually looking forward to it, so it's good stuff. The other note is, again, those that haven't gone down to Sea Park and see our new gym coming together, make the trip. It's neat. I must say, I'm very, very proud of it. And I think anybody that's gone inside say, wow, it's something to behold. So, yeah, that's about it.
Councillor St. Pierre.
We've had our, well, I don't even know which meeting, but we had our next meeting of the Climate Action Committee last week. And looking forward to preparing for a presentation to a committee of the whole in the coming months to basically bring council up to date on what the committee has been doing, on the results of the workshop, on the identified climate priorities. We were joined by Councillor Beddoes. Thank you very much for joining us. And sharing words of wisdom, common sense, and hurry this thing along. So that was good. And I encourage and welcome any one of our council members to join us in the Climate Action Committee. Also been participating heavily in the Climate Caucus, and some good results coming out of that group in terms of working groups dealing with forestry, circular economy, specifically the Food Security Working Group and the general meeting, and I'm looking forward to information and best practices coming out of that group. So things are progressing nicely, and hoping that when we start discussing appointments, we'll see about some sort of an official liaison to that particular group.
Councillor McMath. No. Sooke Community Association AGM. Didn't you go to that? Yeah. How disappointing. I'd love to hear about it. Okay, so for me, I had a bunch of Snow Week cancellations. The AGM of the Victorian Family Court was canceled. The MCS Society was canceled. I did make it to a Senior Centre working group meeting, and this group is eager. This was held at Carol Panalski's house, and cookies and coffee, and eagerness to see a request for proposals or expressions of interest issued by the district on Lot A, which we discussed last year. And I understand that is moving ahead to at some level, and we'll be hearing about that here in council. I met with Councillor Beddoes with Freedom Mobile's Dean Price, who tells us that the company will be reapplying for a third time for a monopine tower near Glynns Lake Road. And it was an interesting discussion. Aesthetical issues, property values, health concerns were the three big issues we heard here a year ago. And we may well hear it again whenever this happens, which I think will be next month or the month after. I've signed some checks. I fielded a lot of tough questions from the Sooke News Mirror. And so hats off to the mayor and the CAO and Ms. Gray and others good questions, I dare say. And next week I'm looking forward to the short road trip that Councillor Lajeunesse and St. Pierre and I are going to make over to the Local Government Leadership Academy in Richmond. The theme this year is inclusive leadership, respectful, collaborative, engaged. There's all sorts of interesting workshops. Prudent investing for BC municipalities, making the most of collaborating with staff is another workshop. And here's one I like: candor, conflict, and creativity, how to make decisions in an environment of ambiguity and competing interests. So I thought that would be a pretty lively one. We'll take notes and maybe videotape that one for later use. Okay, so on that note,